What's up, you guys?
Alright, you guys, it has been a while, a little while actually, but good to be back. I was on vacation, came back, and basically a bunch of stuff happened while I was gone. Mostly Salamangreats invaded the meta, and like the video title says, Salamangreat's first week was amazing, and we're going to talk about why. First and foremost, I want to give my boy Rick Kindle a shout out. I'm actually using his list. He was very nice to message me and ask me to feature his list to give my opinions on it. I actually am very new to Salamangreats. I will admit I've been reading a lot of the cards while on vacation and stuff like that, reading a lot of the texts and whatnot. I saw that it won the ARG in Vegas. I saw that it topped, my boy Cody topped and got second with it at the PPG event. And, you know, there's been stuff going on like regionals and whatnot, and it's done very well. I'm going to talk a lot about Rick's deck. I asked him, you know, just to give me, he wants my honest opinion on the deck, you know, a lot of things. Like I said, I am new to the deck, but I am going to give my best opinion and talk about why this deck has been performing so well since it came out. Now let's talk about the obvious. So everyone is struggling to find these structure decks. Everyone wants to play this deck, and I mean, it's crazy. I think this is insane. It's definitely one of the best budget decks around for the fact that you just buy like 3 structure decks, and it's kind of like Monarchs was, and you just have a competitive meta deck, and you just, you know, you splash some cards in. I know that you guys see cards here that are, you know, a little expensive, like impermanence and stuff like that, and, you know, stuff in the extra in the side deck. But for the most part, this is a pretty budget deck, and especially with the Ash Blossom reprint, which is like the chase card of like the structure deck. I know a lot of people are, you know, finally getting their hands on it. But the first thing I asked Rick, and the only thing I asked him because he wanted my honest opinion, was I asked him, why of all decks did you pick Salamangreats? And he said that he felt that the deck had a control aspect to it, and he loves control decks, and he's also been following it since the OCG announcement and thought it was busted since then, and has decent matchup with the rest of the decks in the meta as well. Very true. The deck has proven to do very well. Now, Rick did top 16 the ARG event. He has a live deck profile. You guys can go check that out. I'll link it down below. If you look at this deck, you know, you see all your Salamangreat cards, you see your starter cards like Lady Debug, and then you have your hand traps. So we'll talk about the hand traps last, but what I am going to do for this video is I'm going to go into the deck, you know, the main side extra, give my opinions, and then we're going to talk about mostly why I feel the deck did so well. We do have YCS Dusseldorf coming up. I was mistaken. I thought it was this past weekend, but it's actually next weekend, so we will, of course, have a format analysis and all that stuff after all that. But anyways, for the main deck, he has, for the Salamangreat card, he plays 1 Jaguar, he plays the 3 Lady Debug, your main starter card, 1 copy of Falco, triple copies of Gazelle, triple copies of Spinny, 2 copies of Foxy. I've seen some lists play 2, some lists play 3. I guess it's down to player preference. Another extender he plays that a lot of people don't play is, or people are starting to catch on, is the Psychic Wielder. A very good card. It was definitely a card you wanted to pick up out of Savage Strike. If you weren't seeing the synergy with the deck, since it was basically a free level 3, I mean, you were missing out. This card's amazing, and this card is continuing to go up. If you watch Market Watch, it's continuing to go up. And then hand traps, Ash Blossoms, and Drolls. So, like I said, I will get to his hand traps at the end of the deck analysis, but I think he picked damn near a perfect lineup for hand traps, including the impermanences. There's only one other card that I've seen some lists play that I think is also very good, and that, of course, is Effect Veiler. But again, we'll talk about that afterwards. Spells, he did choose to main the Fusion of Fire. Now, I have seen some lists that do not play this. They side deck it or they don't play it at all. I think this card is really cool because being able to basically super poly your opponent is insane, so I think that card's really awesome. Foolish Burial gets a lot of your cards started. Call by the Grave, because hand traps do hurt this deck, and being able to just catch the hand traps is insane. It's also really good against strikers, hitting Ray. 3 of your Rhoda, I mean, what can I say? You have 3 Rhoda. 1 copy of Will of the Salamangreat. This is basically a soul charge. Why wouldn't you play it? Copy of Salamangreat Sanctuary. They only play 1. It's pretty cool. You know, you pay 1,000 life points, you target link monster you control, make it sec 0, and if you do gain life points equal to that amount, I mean, it's okay. I mean, you can search it. And you got the triple impermanence. You got, for the Salamangreat traps, you have 1 Salamangreat Rage, 2 copies of Roar, and then 3 Rivalry. So for the main deck, extra deck, we have 1 of the fusion cards. We got 2 copies of Mirage Gestilio. That's a lot. Mirage Stelio. That's a big name. 1 Boral Sword for OTKs. 1 Trisbania. This card actually comes up a lot lot. It actually works in synergy with one of the cards in his side deck. I'm sure you guys will see that. Plays 2 copies of Heat Leo. For Nightmares, of course, the Unicorn and the Phoenix. Nothing to say there. 3 of the most expensive rare we've seen in a long time. 3 Salamangreat Sunlight Wolf. This card is the whole deck. This card is insane. And 3 copies of the, what is it, the Bella Links. If I'm even pronouncing these guys right. But yeah, 3 of those. All pretty standard. Side deck is 3 Sphere Mode. You guys already know combo decks. You just Sphere Mode them. Same thing with the Pendulum decks. Prankatops is just a really good card against back row decks and being able to play around the rank up spell. We got the Starving Venom. That's another Super Poly target. He does play the Super Poly. 2 copies of Twin Twister. 3 Evenly for back row decks. And Eradicator, which was supposed to go with the Trisbania. Now, overall, like I said, I'm very new to this deck. I think this deck is very well built, though. I think the fact that he, you know, played, it seems to be the optimal amount of Salamangreats. Now, like I said, it's all player preference, and you guys can comment below what you guys think, but I feel like his ratios were correct. I've seen a lot of lists, and I've seen that they do play the 1 copy of the Jaguar, the 1 copy of the Falco, the 3 copies of the Gazelle, the 3 copies of this. I've seen some lists play 2, and then I've seen like 2 to 3 on this, and, you know, it's just all player preference. I think, of course, you know, the deck will continue to evolve, and I mean, if more cards come out for support, you know, it'll be needed. I feel playing any less of this is insane. I've seen people play 2, and I mean, I guess it works for you, but I think Rick was right on playing 3 copies of this. I mean, this is a Stratos. Why would you not play? Would you play Stratos if it's at 3? I mean, do I even need to ask that question? So this card is insane, and I also really like the fact that he incorporated Psychic Wielder. I feel a lot of people did not do that, and I mean, if you look at the list, you'll see there's a lot of variations. I mean, I think some people went as far as to main the Terratop and Talcum Board. However, I just don't want to brick on that, so I think this card's very, very good for what it does. I think a lot of people don't really pay attention to that, so it's very cool. And you know, mostly the Salamangreat stuff is pretty standard. I like the fact that he main decked just 1 copy of this. I feel like this, you won't oversee it. This is a card that you're able to, you know, just kind of blow out your opponent in the mirror match. If you expected a lot of mirror matches, and I mean, let's face it, there was probably a ton this past weekend. This past weekend, there was probably an endless amount of Salamangreat mirror matches because everyone had access to the deck. People played it. People practiced for it. There were people at my locals that were proxying the card before it even came out. They were practicing with it. So I am not surprised by the amount of mirror matches there might have been. So being 1 step ahead with this card is awesome. Of course, the Rhodas, the Soul Charge, all these cards, like, they all make sense. The thing with this deck that I've been learning is that, you know, you basically just set up boards, and it's very cool because you're able to, you know, this is an Icarus attack, and this is just a negate. I mean, this card is very, very cool. When a spell, trap card, or monster effect is activated, while you control a Salamangreat Link monster, you negate the activation if you do, when this card is in your graveyard. If a monster is summoned to your field with the same material, you can set this card. So basically, yeah, you do have to banish it when it leaves, but basically you get to reset it. If you guys remember, it's kind of like Lost Wind. You basically reset the card, get to use it again. That's insane. Like, you set up a board of negates, and it's really, really strong. Overall, I think his list was amazing, and I think what really shined and what I really like personally is the hand trap selection. Ash is the most generic hand trap. There's no way around it. I feel like this card is either really good in formats or really bad in formats, and I mean, it's proven to be good in pretty much every format. I think a lot of people, you know, started to, you know, play less hand traps, myself included, but now I feel with a deck like Salamangreat's around, it's kind of like Strikers where you do have to play a lot of hand traps, so why would you not play the best ones? I think Droll was an amazing call. Droll is without a doubt the best hand trap against the Thunder deck, against any kind of danger deck. I think a lot of people just don't realize that in a deck like this where you can OTK, and I mean, a lot of your cards are free, you have like 1-card combos, 2-card combos, etc. You Droll and Lockbird an opponent and it stops their whole turn, you can just kill them the next turn. So I mean, it's pretty crazy. And they did play 3 Impermanents. Now, I have seen people play Impermanents, and I've also seen people play Effect Veiler. Effect Veiler is the only card that I would like to see in this list. Outside of that, though, I think Impermanence is amazing. My only flaw with Impermanence is that if you do draw it, you know, later on, you know, if you do draw into it and stuff like that, I mean, if you guys have noticed, people who do main Phantasmal, some people are maining the Thanos Dragon, and in that case, if you were to draw into this, it would be really bad, but since he's not playing that in the main deck, or actually in the deck at all, this was probably a better call on his end, and it's something I just noticed, because the list that won, I believe, played Phantasmal in the main deck, and then played Veiler, because it gave you something to draw into, because you'd already have cards on the field, so you wouldn't be able to Impermanence from your hand, you just have to set it at that point. It's kind of useless, so I think it was a very good call. I think it was a very good hand trap lineup. I think the fact that he decided to main Call by the Grave was insane. I think a lot of people do not understand like how, you know, important Call by the Grave is. Being able to just hit anything is amazing. Like, you're not only hitting hand traps, like, trust me, you're cutting off Thunder Dragon effects, you're doing a lot of things, you know, with Call by the Grave, you hit Ray, etc., etc. So I think this card is just very strong. I think a lot of people just underestimate how strong Call by the Grave is, especially now that it's at 3. And the last thing to talk about is, of course, his main deck of Rivalry. Now, I know a lot of people are going to say, why would you play Rivalry over Gozen? Now, Gozen is very strong. Let's face it. It really hurts a lot of decks. It hurts Altergeist. It hurts Striker. It hurts so many decks. The thing, though, that I will say is that Rivalry, and this is what he told me, is that Rivalry is very strong because Dangers can play under Gozen. Dangers are all dark, so the attribute means nothing to them. Yes, you do lock us out of playing our Thunder cards and stuff like that, but in all honesty, if we already have a Colossus up or we already have a Dark on the field and we just need to go into another, into another Colossus off of Dark or off of Roar, off of our Dark Dragons, it's irrelevant if you have Gozen on the field. I've played through Gozen many times. Rivalry, on the other hand, I'll tell you, Rivalry is nasty. And Rivalry is nasty because it hurts so many decks. I know this card isn't good against Altergeist. They play it themselves. However, I think it's very strong in, these matchups. Now, the thing about this deck is look how beautifully this deck supports it. They're all Cyberse. The only thing that's not Cyberse is the Wheeler, but I mean, outside of that, they're all Cyberse, you guys. It's insane. So I think Rivalry was a very, very strong call and a very good call on his part. I know a lot of you will say, why didn't you play Gozen? Well, there's the reason, you guys. If you're expecting a lot of Thunder Danger decks, and I'll be honest, after the performance of that deck, you guys know how much I love that deck. I think Rivalry is a much better call. I think Gozen is not without its charm. I think Gozen is very strong, but I feel like Rivalry might just be a little bit stronger. Your Altergeist matchup was already good because you can already just set up interruptions, and that one interruption can ruin their whole game plan. Then you can kill them next turn. So I feel like Rivalry, even though it wasn't good against that matchup, is very good across the board against everything. And that basically kind of intensifies why he had such a good matchup against pretty much everything across the board. Overall, I love the deck. Shout out to you, Rick. Thank you so much for sending me this, bro. I really appreciate it. Now, last part of the video, this deck has been performing off the walls. It almost won the PPG tour. Now, I know what you guys are thinking with the PPG tour. It's basically like an ARG for those of you that don't know. My boy Jeremy Mitchell actually won it with Pendulum. He's a god with that deck. You guys already know. But this deck really did perform. So many of them topped the ARG in Vegas. So many of them topped the PPG event. So many of them topped regionals. And this is on the first release, you guys. I have not seen a deck perform this well in so long off of its first release. Thunder Dragons didn't even do this good. And you guys know, I love me some Thunder Dragons. And guess what? They just really didn't do anything their first week. But this deck came out swinging, absolutely swinging. I mean, it won the ARG. It almost won the PPG. It topped regionals. It has endless tops at these events. I mean, what else is there to say? This deck, it was hyped for good reason, and this deck did perform, and I think it's awesome that, a deck that most players can get access to is available. Ash Blossom, it's no longer really hard card to get. You're guaranteed as long as you can hunt down those structure decks. I unfortunately have not been able to hunt them down yet, but I have sources, so I'll always be able to get them eventually. This is definitely a deck I will look into. I think the main reason why this deck did so well, though, is, I mean, let's face it, if you weren't prepared, I'll be honest, if I went into an event and played against Salamangreats, I'll probably have to read all the cards. I'd have to hope that I go first, open my board, and hope that they just can't play. But if it's on the other hand, if they're going first, I'd probably have to read every card. And that's bad on my part, but, I'm going to take the time, like I said, to read these cards. Just been on vacation. But, it's pretty crazy that, this deck just came out swinging so hard. I think certain tech choices are also why the deck did so well, whether you played Wielder or not, whether you played Rivalry, Goes, and whatever you played as your floodgates. I feel like when you have a very consistent deck like this that can search every card it needs, when it's able to have a Soul Charge / Monster Reborn, when it's able to control the game, when it's able to win off of 1 or 2 cards, when it's able to, just really just do everything it would want to do either during your turn or be able to play on your opponent's turn and negate their turn, I think it's just insane. And it goes without saying that this deck performed just as well as we thought it would. It was definitely not just hype. It definitely lived up to the hype, and it did amazing. And overall, I know this wasn't the winners list, but I really like this list. I also like the fact that I was approached to feature this list. I think it's a really good take on the deck, and it gives you guys another option, especially a little more of a budget option. You guys are wondering, Slim, why do you say that? I say that because Thanos Dragon is pushing, what, 90 bucks? I know the winner made them, but this is proof that you can play the deck without them and still do well. You notice they're not even in his side deck. I know he talked about wanting to cut the Eradicators and the Trisbania because it, in theory it would work, but it doesn't come up that much. But let's face it, for the most part, this deck is pretty on the budget side. Now, you guys are thinking, oh, evenly is expensive, kind of. All these cards are starting to go up. Like, we already know this, but I mean, again, if you already had impermanences from last format or pre this deck's released, and you had all this other stuff, I mean, you're sitting pretty, to be honest. Like, this deck is not expensive, especially if you got your hands on the structure decks. Like, you're good to go, and as long as you picked up these bad boys before they skyrocketed, I'll be honest, I think it's a really good, you know, budget slash alternative deck for a lot of players that don't want to shell out the money to play the other really expensive decks. So overall, I expect a lot from Salamangreats, and they already have blown my mind. I think the deck has just done amazing during its first week. Rick, you did amazing. Shout out to you again, bro. Thank you again for sending me this. I just want to know what you guys think. Like I said, I need to brush up on all these cards. You know, I got to build the deck for you guys, give you guys some ideas of how I would play it. And, you know, I definitely want to do that in, you know, in a real deck profile. I myself am not going to build these on here just for you guys. I want to feature the deck, you know, when I build it, you know, with help from people like Rick and people like that when I ask them for their opinions. You know, for you guys to really see like my thoughts and my process into the deck building of this deck. Overall, I think this deck is great. I think it's great that a lot of people can play it. Hopefully you guys picked up all your other staple cards ahead of time, because if you did, like I said, you're sitting pretty on a pretty decent budget deck that you can get 3 structures, add a couple you know, cards to make it meta, and there you go. So overall, Salamangreats, you had an amazing first week. I can't wait to see what else happens. This weekend again is YCS Dusseldorf in Germany. Can't wait to see his performance there. Can't wait to see his performance in the ARG in Vegas coming up. And I mean the ARG, the UDS in Vegas. And I just hope overall that we continue to see this deck do well. It's nice to have a new deck in the format, and I'm glad to see that it's performing as well as we thought it would. But overall, those are my thoughts. Let me know what you guys think down below. What you thought of Rick's deck, what you liked, what you didn't like, what you think about Salamangreats overall. Let me know in the comments below, and we'll be sure to have a continued discussion on it. And just remember, this is just the beginning of Salamangreats here on this channel. There will definitely be more. So I hope you guys enjoyed. Give it a thumbs up, and thank you for watching.